Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, on today's show, recently we'd been talking about a lot of things. I would look at this and I would say, this is probably a good idea for salvage. This would be a good idea for being a pirate. This would be a good idea for smuggling, that sort of thing. And, you always kind of come back to the same old issue of, the game really isn't ready to support these things, or it's just going to be another feature that comes in and it's going to be broken. And it's true. Star Citizen has one or two bugs. Now, you might recognize this footage. This is from my very first trip to Microtech in the Caterpillar. I was very excited. I wanted to see the new planet, obviously some beautiful scenery, so I figured, why not do a little exploration? And, not exploration like there's an actual career and you get to walk around with a tricorder and record things and all that kind of stuff. There's no real scientific exploration in Star Citizen yet. It's more or less just exploring to enjoy it, just for the act of exploring. And, that's just about it. And, to some people, that can be pretty satisfying. I mean, this would probably be more towards the crowd who kind of views Star Citizen as an online inspirational space photo simulator game, where it's like, oh, here, now I can take all these beautiful screenshots. And Star Citizen certainly is that. And, the bugs, some people might, feel that they're just horrifying. And other people might say it's just part of the fun challenge of the Star Citizen universe, and that's the way early access gaming works, and you better get used to it because that's the way that it is. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But in the end, I don't like to let these things kind of taint my experience. Here I am returning to Microtech after quite some time. The first experience kind of said, maybe it's not quite ready. And I recently returned. This footage I took today, I decided that, I felt inspired to explore the North Pole of Microtech. It was a conversation, those of you who know will know kind of what the inspiration was behind this, kind of an inside scum joke. But I decided to check out the North Pole because I realized that because the planets don't wobble and they just kind of rotate in space, that you would have a perpetual sunset up at the North Pole. And, it's one of those things that's kind of self-evident, but it just recently occurred to me. And I was just like, oh yeah, I could actually, I like to get these screenshots with beautiful sunsets. You go to the North Pole of the planet, because it doesn't wobble, you're always going to be in a permanent sunset. So, duh. And, it was just the act of exploring this area that I found these things. Now there are the usual, little errors and bugs, but when you're creating a whole planet, a few misplaced rocks, I'll let you have that one. But it was really cool. I never really thought that the idea of water splashing up on the helmet would be all that interesting, but it does add a certain amount of realism and immersion to the experience, and it is a nice touch. You think it's a little thing, but it is a nice touch. And even though there's things that are missing from the game that I would very much like to see in the game, like salvage and data running and more in-depth smuggling. Obviously, we just recently covered that. There are times when, just exploring just like this is, for me at least, it's enough for that day. I don't feel that it's enough for the game in total. I wish there were more. I wish there were more that in fact worked. Like, even if basic trading just worked, Todd Howard quote, if it just functioned, you didn't have to worry about random disconnections, and you could just go out and you could just make some cash and outfit your ship a little bit better, and you didn't have to worry about the dreaded 30K error, it would be a lot of fun. It would be a much more interesting and rewarding experience. And yes, absolutely, we've got a lot of gameplay loops to not only close, but to start, And that's kind of we kind of end up in this interesting kind of Star Citizen paradox where it's like we want all this stuff added to the game, but then at the same time, at least on some levels, we realize that by adding that stuff to the game, you're probably unintentionally breaking other things, and it isn't until you get everything on the table that you can actually get to a point where you can make it all fit together nicely and actually function smoothly. It's like we always kind of feel like, oh man, I wish they would just take some time to polish up this patch and make sure that everything worked. And the truth is that if we did that with every patch, then every patch would probably take a hell of a lot longer than it does take to come out. But then again, you could argue that, yeah, it would take a lot longer for the patches to come out, but at the same time, we would probably get better patches when they did come out, right? And so it's kind of a paradox, And that's often kind of our internal personal struggle with Star Citizen. It's kind of like more features, more ships, more gameplay. Come on. But at the same time, when it does come out and it's broken, we're like, oh, they should have taken more time with this and gotten it just right. It's that struggle. It's always that struggle. And let's be honest, it's going to be that struggle for a while. And at times, I see people's comments, well, if this game did have a publisher, like any of the big AAA publishers, then it would probably be more on track, or, we'd be getting things sooner. I don't really feel that that's true. To be perfectly honest, in a weird way, I think it's easy to confuse Star Citizen with other games. You could say, oh, well, then we both have real money transactions. We buy ships, we can buy skins, which technically we can't apply to our ships still. CIG, just a little reminder about that. I do own the pirate skin. I would like to use it soon. Like we have, in the same way that other games have cosmetics that you can spend money on, the Atom Store, the Gold Store in World of Tanks, blah, 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 on and on and on. Even in WoW, you can just go and buy mounts and things like that. But whereas in a lot of those games, that money goes to, to the company, to the shareholders, into dividends and profits and things like that. With Star Citizen, it goes to the furthering development of the game. Right? And I think that's an important distinction there, because realistically, no AAA publisher would have taken this on. They would have just said, "Get out of here with that crap." I want a game that you can deliver inside of a year, or maybe just a little over a year, and I want it to only cost this much to make, and I want to have it in the stores by Christmas. And it's kind of where you get, a lot of these AAA developers, if you're following them, and a lot of these MMOs that are kind of working on these constricted development cycles, they kind of come out and they kind of crash and burn. There are certain games like Elite Dangerous and things like that, that do go on and survive and are really good games. But then there's a whole host of games that, let's be honest, are pretty much garbage. No matter how much, certain outlets would like to promote them and say, oh, this is going to be the next big thing, it's the next big game, they kind of come out and then they're a flash in the pan and they're gone, or they just crash and burn on release and everyone's like, what is this piece of shit? And then, when we say that, of course, then we're just all negative, toxic gamers, and, what is it? We're privileged or whatnot is always the argument, that we're over demanding and all this crazy business. It's funny, how horrible and toxic we supposedly are when we just ask for a game that works. Often when I make these videos where I talk about things like smuggling or hacking or crime stat, or just say altering the game system just slightly so that when you're out doing FPS missions and you die, because of the instability in the game right now, that you shouldn't lose your weapons. The same way you now don't lose weapons on your ship, you shouldn't lose weapons on your person. When the game is more stable down the road, then yes, absolutely allow that. and make sure the community understands that when you put that in, that is a temporary thing, that this is not not going to be permanent. Like, you're going to walk around and have your same guns all the time, unless perhaps you install an insurance system. Like, when you purchase a gun, the sales clerk will say, do you want to insure this gun for an extra 200 credits or whatever? And you go, yeah, sure. And then yes, you do get your weapon back, things like that. But I think that whenever I look for low-hanging fruit, as I like to say, things like that I think smaller changes that CIG could make that would make the game much more livable and much more enjoyable to play, even in its current state, which is not the best, obviously. I think that you could really, honestly, you could get to the point where you could reduce enough of the pain points for the players who are actually playing the game that, while it is not a complete product, and while it is a product that is still going to take quite some time to finish, it could be a much more enjoyable product and a much more livable product. The only real challenge to some of these changes would be to make sure that the community understands that there are certain things that we're going to give you for now that we are going to take away later once the game becomes more stable and it justifies those additional difficulties or challenges, like losing FPS weapons in combat. And that's kind of why I make the suggestion videos, right? Like, here's something you can do over here. Here's something that you can do over there. Oh, you were right on the cusp of making it so we could hack crime stat for other players. I think things like that, like some of these little changes, it's great to get the Carrick, it's great to get Microtech, but I think at the same time, if every once in a while you kind of slowed the patch cycle down, or not slowed it down, but altered it somewhat, so that instead of kind of saying, oh, and here's a new moon and here's a new space station, what if you took some of the existing things and you kind of spent your efforts on just improving those and making little changes here and there to kind of make the game as it exists now more playable and more livable. One of the things that Star Citizen, suffers from is that, it's like you're walking to the horizon. Every time you get to the edge of the horizon, you look and there's a whole new horizon for you to travel to. And that can be, not exactly inspiring. Yeah. And I think that there's little steps along the way that you can take if you manage to squeeze some of these things into these patches that would actually make the wait a lot more bearable, and make, if you geared some things just towards that, that daily player experience, things that made it rewarding and gave a little bit more depth to the gameplay that we already have, or just tweaked and closed a couple of the little gameplay loops that we have and make things a little bit more livable and a little bit more enjoyable, you might find some of the pressure from the community, come on, get it done, get it done, would not disappear, but would ease off a little bit and buy you a little bit of breathing room to finish Star Citizen. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts on the subject. Anyways, that's why I make the suggestion videos. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.